there was a possibility of reverse discrimination, meaning that these can be used by the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe and OBC categories, the other backward castes category, against fellow students as well as staff and faculty.
You have to have a legal safeguard against discrimination, which we have against Untouchability Offence Act, Atrocity Act.
Right.
We have regulation against sexual discrimination. We have regulation against religious discrimination. And to say that not to have them because it will result in reverse discrimination of those who are presumably will discriminate in case of untouchable, the high caste, is not a theoretically solid argument. Also,
Right.
legally, it is not a correct argument.
Dominant upper castes have always been taught, the children, more often than not, they're taught the entire practice of discrimination. Hello and welcome to The Federal. You're watching Off the Beaten Track, a program in which we pick up one important issue and take a holistic look into it. Today we will be talking about higher education. Higher education, recently there was a bit of a flux. There were protests in universities, in other higher educational institutions by a section of students, but this was actually not a protest demanding better quality of education or for change in curricula. None of that was there, but essentially on a matter of equity, people saying, the students saying that there was a possibility of reverse discrimination with the new set of UGC rules and regulations which had come, essentially to stop caste-based discrimination of people. We want to put matters as they are, directly, not hiding anything. So joining me, and we are also going to be talking about the overall crisis in the area of higher education, primarily stemming from the new education policy, how this has actually resulted in a certain amount of corporatization, a certain amount of centralization, and of course communalization, and a variety of other ills have crept in. So I am going to be joined by one of the most eminent educationists of India, Professor Sukhadeo Thorat, who has been a professor in the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, for several decades. He's also been the chairman of the University Grants Commission. So welcome to this program, Professor Thorat. I really am very thankful to you for having joined us on this program on such a crucial issue. Let me begin with what has been in the news recently, the UGC regulations, the protests by the students, the petitions in the Supreme Court, and then eventually the Supreme Court putting the new rules and regulations under abeyance, while saying that we will have a further and a detailed, fresh look at those. Now, the basic question is that the principal point of the petitioners in the Supreme Court was that these rules and regulations raises the possibility of reverse discrimination, meaning that these can be used by students from the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe and OBC categories, the other backward castes category, against fellow students as well as staff and faculty. Now, based on your decades of experience in higher education and also in the regulation body, the UGC, do you think that there is any empirical evidence for any form of reverse discrimination happening?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me on Federal.
Thank you.
The UGC has brought out 2026 regulation,
Yes.
making improvement over the 2012 regulation, which were framed by the UPA 2 government, that is by the Congress. And once they were brought, the mother of Vemula and Payal Tagdi, whose daughter and son committed suicide, went to the Supreme Court, requesting the Supreme Court to ask UGC to implement this 2012 regulation effectively, because
they were not being effectively implemented. That is what you have written in one recent article.
Yeah, their argument was that despite this regulation, their closest relative has committed suicide. So, which means that,
Hmm.
and based on discrimination, which means that
That's right.
there was no enough safeguard in those regulations. At the UGC, then the petitioner Indira Jaising and Disha Wadekar also made certain suggestions for improvement. As a
Hmm.
result, they brought the 2026 regulation. I am not going to go into greater detail.
Right.
I want to address the question raised by you. The
Hmm.
major argument of the petitioner on behalf of the agitator was and is that the there is a general definition of caste discrimination in which
Hmm.
all categories caste, race, color, religion, ethnicity, that is tribal, physically handicapped, and even economically weaker section are included.
Hmm.
But in addition to that, there is a separate provision of discrimination of scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and OBC. Now,
Right.
their objection is why this separate mention of caste, if
Hmm.
caste is already included in the general provision, and by mentioning the caste separately, there is a possibility that there might be a reverse discrimination of the high caste. Now, my point is, my argument is that this is a very unfounded argument made by the petitioner for a simple reason that you have to have a legal safeguard against discrimination, which we have
Hmm.
against Untouchability Offence Act, Atrocity Act.
Right.
We have regulation against sexual discrimination. We have regulation against religious discrimination. So you have to have, and to say that not to have them because it will result in reverse discrimination of those who are presumably will discriminate in case of untouchable the high caste is not
Hmm.
a theoretically solid argument. Also,
Right.
legally, it is not a correct argument simply because the whenever complaint is made by the scheduled caste or so, it is examined by the committee. There is a provision of equity committee. The committee will examine the sustainability and and based on the
Then
actual
decide.
use. So there is no question of any misuse or any reverse discrimination as such. Now, the arguing that there will be a reverse discrimination. 2012 regulation has been in practice for last 11 years. There is not a
Right.
single case which has come to our notice where there is a
Matter of reverse discrimination
complaint or reverse discrimination or malafide intention. You know, the
against
scheduled
any
caste,
of the upper castes.
yeah. Scheduled caste, scheduled tribe students are so weak, they cannot show
Yes.
courage to
Exactly.
lodge a complaint against a powerful high caste student. So
Right.
I think it is an argument which is made on the basis of political. It's a political argument, an ideological argument, because there
These
is
are
a
something which is actually inculcated in people, a value system right from their childhood within family, because of the dominant upper castes have always been taught. The children, more often than not, they're taught the entire practice of discrimination and said that it is absolutely fine. That this is
yeah,
what
yeah,
has to
yeah,
be done.
yeah. That is there. That is that. The regulation, in fact, what does regulation does is regulation do is that since the student come with those prejudices, they try to
Right.
sort of sensitize against them and try to bring it in conformity with the provision of the Constitution of equality of
Right.
opportunity law and all that. But the point that I was saying that for last 10 years or so, there has been a tendency to sort of express certain views about the inferiority complex.
Hmm.
That whenever the issues of caste is brought in or untouchability is brought in literature, they are not comfortable.
Hmm.
We already have Untouchability Offence Act and nobody has objected for the last 70 years. We have Atrocity Act, nobody has objected. It has not
Exactly.
included reverse
19,
discrimination.
1955 was the time when the Untouchability Act was
So
introduced. Right.
this trend of opposing, pointing out the reverse discrimination or misuse is the outcome of the growing Brahmanical ideology under which they do not want to highlight that the caste should figure in, which is in fact is a dirt caste and touchability of the society. They don't want to bring it. That is why from the textbook Ambedkar, untouchability, Dalit Panther, several things have been removed. So that's the reason. It's a political and ideological. It has nothing, I think, much less to do with the reverse discrimination or misuse of the law.
So, how do you see the roadmap ahead? Supreme Court has come and actually state the 2026 regulations of the UGC. So now, what do you think is going to happen, and would the regulations eventually be able to come back into be enforced once again?
Oh, yes, they will be because the Supreme Court has continued the 2012 regulation.
Right.
Because the 2026 regulation has superseded the 2012 regulation.
Hmm.
And Indira Singh pointed out that if you keep
Right.
this in abeyance, there are no regulations. So they use some
Hmm.
provision in the constitution and say that no, 2012 regulation will continue. What they will
Hmm.
do, what they have suggested, that they will set up a expert committee of the judges and make a improvement in 2026 regulation, and I think they will ask the UGC to implement. So obviously they think that it is vague in terms of certain legal provision. So it will continue. I think regulation will continue with improvement. And there are other limitations which I have pointed out in my article in Hindustan Times,
Yes.
but I won't spend time on that.
Yes.
I think the regulation will continue with some improvement. We'll get to know
Right.
on 19th of March when the case will come for a hearing.
Okay. Now this issue has come. We will actually, as you said, 19th of March is going to be a very crucial date, and we hope that eventually that there will be some kind of a stronger rules and regulations which are effectively implemented. Also, that's more important to prevent any kind of discrimination against students from the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and the OBCs, which have traditionally been discriminated against by the upper caste in Indian society. Now, linked to this is also the issues related, to the higher education as such. This is a matter of equity. Is just not. It's just one facet of the problem. You have consistently argued two things. One, that there is a fundamental problem in the manner in which the new education policy was virtually rammed through by the government from 2020 onwards. So there has not been any democratic acceptance on that. So people need to understand that. And the second is that you have said that both in terms of quality and in terms of equity, higher education is actually suffering. It is not enabling people to, and society to grow, because education is very vital to be able to develop skills and to be able to lead to the betterment of India and contribute to the growth of the country. These are all intrinsically linked to the future of India.
Yes. Before I go to the new
New
education
education. Yeah.
one point that I want to mention and then switch over to the point raised by you is that under the 2026 regulation,
Mm.
the argument of reverse discrimination by the high caste, but
Mm.
the provision is that even if a scheduled caste and scheduled tribe and OBC discriminate against the physically handicapped or a woman
Right.
from the high caste, there is a provision for lodging a complaint against the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. So this is a very inclusive regulation that
Regulation.
each one of them is subject to discrimination, not the high caste alone.
Mm.
Everybody is subject to the discrimination. So this provides another point which sort of reject the argument made by the petitioner. Well, let me come to the higher education now. Now, I think it will be better that I start with the new education policy
Yes.
and then
Which
bring
was
it.
introduced during the COVID years, and that too very stealthily.
Yeah, yeah. See, we have to take a little. We have to go back to the history that the policy, the earliest policy, final policy, which was approved by the government of India was 1986, which was mainly
Mm.
based on the Kothari Commission report.
This was the
And because
education policy
latest,
of 86. Yeah,
before 2020,
that's
the
right.
policy was in 1986, approved by the parliament. And based on that policy, there was a program of action which was laid down in 1992 because there was a change of government. So
Mm.
1992 program of action and policy of 86 is the earliest policy before the 2022 policy.
Right.
Now, for which means for almost 37 years, there has not been a policy. The policy has been 86 policy program of action of
That
19.
that is what continued.
Yeah, that is what continuing. Any change, any additional measure which are taken, which are within the framework of that policy. You know,
Right.
the when I was the chairman of UGC, 11th plan was declared by Manmohan Singh as the education plan, and we have taken a special measures. So they were also within the framework of 1986 policy.
86.
80, to 1920 policy, 22 policy come after 37 years. Now, this point I'm making for a simple reason that the higher education system has not been studied for 37 years. And it is after that the 2020 policy was brought in. My first point about this 2020 policy is that this policy has been brought after 37 years, after the 1992 program of action, without really studying and taking scrutinize the higher education status of higher education as such. Whenever you make a policy, you have to study the system.
That's
If
right.
you look at the Radhakrishna Commission report of 1948, Kothari Commission report, they studied the entire system. Now, studied
Right.
the entire system means what? They had several expert committees, 21, 27 expert committees. Then they had several subgroups. But most importantly, they visited the university and colleges on a sample basis, collected the data, had a interaction, and then they got a fairly good amount of insight on the strength and the weaknesses, and then they make suggestion. So Kothari Commission is the commission which really laid down the foundation of the present uniform and
Right.
coordinated higher education system. But based on the study, close study, if you look at the chapter-wise description, they give the data, they analyze it, present the problem, and then make the suggestion. Now, unfortunately, the 2020 policy, and then there is other thing that the higher education system has gone under a tremendous transformation after 19 uh, uh, the after the earlier policy of 1991. One
Especially in the last 20 years, there has been a massive amount of privatization in higher education,
exactly,
which has changed the
exactly.
entire character of the entire sector.
Yeah, yeah. That we had to, in terms of ownership, we had two type of institution. One is the government, another is the private aided, which was
Right.
motivated by the philanthropic consideration. But then the self-financing, what is called purely private, began to appear in early 90s. And as on today, almost more than half of the universities are
Right.
in the private sector, which has not been the feature of early 70s or early
And
60s.
every alternate month you see a new university coming up, and hardly able to you can actually have
Yeah,
trust in that university, but
yeah,
they are charging very high amounts of fees,
yeah,
and students are struggling
yeah.
to manage both ends.
So the privatization is the major feature. As I say, half of the universities, 65% of 43,000 colleges are under private, self-financing private,
My
and
goodness.
almost 67% of the standalone institution which provide diploma and certificate and other thing are under private. It's a massive privatization. There is
Right.
another thing that I wanted to say, share with you is this. This is also an underestimation because when I submitted a report to the Karnataka government after studying the Karnataka
Right.
education for 1.5 years, I was made a chairman of that commission.
Right.
Uh, there I developed a method. It came to my notice that the public institutions are also privatized, and how they are privatized, that they introduce self-financing courses to get the funding because they don't get enough grant. So you have a regular
Right.
courses where fee is very low, but you have a courses, particularly professional and skill education, where fee is high, which is almost on the par on the compared with the private universities. If you take those self-financing courses, then the magnitude of the privatization will be much higher. Now, giving the example of Karnataka, just the single example of Karnataka, is that the percentage of the student under private sector is about 40%. But if you take the self-financing courses in the public institution, in private aided institution, it comes to almost one third. So you add 43 plus 30%, 73% of the student in Karnataka under private sector.
are paying for their courses, to put it very bluntly.
For the
Yeah.
courses.
And
Similarly,
you also pay in public institutions, but not as high as in private institutions.
exactly. So this is a
And these,
backdoor privatization in the public institutions.
now,
This
my
has to be.
simple question is at this point is that if there is such a high cost to higher education, what impact is it having on the aspirants, people who want to get educated in higher educational institutions? Is
No,
the
yeah, yeah,
social
yeah. I'll come to that. Please understand the background, because if you don't
yes,
understand the background, you don't understand
yes,
the argument. Privatization is leading to an unequal access is a truism. Everybody knows it.
hmm,
But the new point that you should understand is the one that I am sharing with you. What I am saying is this, that the method adopted by the 2020 policy is such that the recommendations are not based on the study of the system of higher education, which has
okay,
underwent a serious transformation. Privatization is one aspect of it. There are other aspects. For example, the medium of instruction has switched over to the English medium to a large extent. So the point that I want to make is that the 2020 policy is not based on the scrutiny of the proper study. Therefore, they do not know the exact problem. So the recommendations are based on the best practices. If you look at the preface in the Kasturi Ranjan committee, last committee,
hmm,
in the preface, it is clearly mentioned that it is following out of box approach, because there was much less in the box. They had not studied. So the it is based on the best practices which are borrowed partly from the USA. It is based on the self understanding of it and not, and that's why it is running into trouble on
hmm,
several recommendations. Now, so that's the problem with the policy. Now, coming to the impact of it, because you are keen on equity uh,
yes,
impact on this, the point is that the goal of the new education policy, as has been stated in their objective, is of a complete transformation of higher education system to improve the quality and ensure equal access. And complete transformation is indeed true, and because they are bringing changes in all kind of sphere. But let me come to the equity aspect of it. There are
yes,
several recommendations in the education policy which are for the quality purposes, and they have
hmm,
also made the recommendation for equity and inclusive education. But their recommendation on inclusive and education, I'll come to that later. But the point that I'm making is that the recommendation which are made, most of it, 90% of them are a recommendation for quality. They have an implication for equity, and that people don't understand.
okay,
We would focus that the fee in the private sector is very high, therefore the access for the lower income group and scheduled caste is low. That's quite
hmm,
obvious, that truism.
obvious,
There are recommendations which are for quality improvement, which will reduce the access of the low income group. This is a very indirect and intelligent method which is used by this commission.
okay,
Now, let me give you a couple of examples.
yes,
The first recommendation is that they say the affiliating system should be replaced by the unitary system of universities. Now, we had a strong tradition of 200 year of a affiliating system. It began with the
right,
Calcutta University and West Bengal, as a matter of fact, that we have a university which is a teaching university. Colleges are affiliated to them. Degree is given by the university. Colleges
right,
generally run the undergraduate program, and the university run a postgraduate and PhD program.
postgraduate program, yes,
This is the Indian model. The American model is another model, is unitary university, where undergraduate, postgraduate, and PhD program all run under one
all
shed.
right,
Okay. Their recommendation is that all universities, affiliating universities, should be converted into a unitary university within 15 years. And what they are recommending is that these unitary universities should be multi-discipline and large and
hmm,
located in the metropolitan cities. As a matter of fact, they have recommended 360 universities, unitary universities in 370 or 6 districts.
hmm,
Now, understand it, because you have to understand the impact on equity. Now, affiliating system has advantage and disadvantage. Unitary system has advantage and disadvantage. Now,
hmm,
unitary system advantage is that undergraduate student also benefit from the best of the teacher, because undergraduate
right,
teaching is also done in the university. I mean, I went to Harvard and I saw Amartya Sen teaching 2,000 students sitting in a class of undergraduate. He
Right.
wouldn't teach only the PhD or student, but he teach undergraduate, so they benefit. So that's the advantage of unity university. In affiliating system, best of the teachers are in the university who teach postgraduate and not the undergraduate.
Not
So
that
that is
good.
the
So the
disadvantage.
quality of education in undergraduate is not as good.
Yeah, exactly. Comparatively speaking. But the advantage of the affiliating university is that is the equal access and cheap access, because your
Right.
colleges are spread into small town, large villages, medium town, also big
Just a
cities.
few kilometers outside the villages
Exactly,
of people,
exactly. Student walk
you
on
have
bicycle.
degree colleges in India.
Exactly. They walk. The girls go on a cycle. They use the public transport and all that. So that's the advantage of affiliating university. Now imagine within a 15 year, if you are converting all state university into affiliating university, how will they convert the affiliating university, say Calcutta University, into an unity university? That the colleges affiliated to Calcutta University will be de-affiliated, and a cluster university, which will be unitary university, will be formed.
So
So
what
you
will
will
happen to these colleges?
yeah, yeah. And the Calcutta University, which doesn't offer undergraduate program, will offer undergraduate program. So both
Hmm.
the university created from de-affiliation as well as the origin university, since they will offer undergraduate, postgraduate, PhD program, both will be unitary university, and that's their argument. But imagine what will happen is that the under the cluster university after de-affiliation, these all colleges in the small in the large villages, small town will be merged in the cities. That's what their strategy.
Right.
They will be closed down. Now, as a result, the access of the poor student will be reduced. They will have to come to
Hmm.
big cities, take a room on the rent. So the impact of the unitary university will be unequal access. It will reduce the access of the poor. People don't
Right.
understand. This is very complicated. That's the Brahmanical ingenuity of their scholarship. That you make suggestion, but indirectly you see to it that the access to higher education is get reduced. That is one point.
That
Second point,
limited to the well already well heeled and the upper castes. That is what
exactly,
is the
exactly,
Brahminical
exactly.
approach to higher education.
Yeah. Take a second decision on the new education policy. That is, they make a recommendation of a multiple duration of the same degree, one degree with a multiple duration. So bachelor is 3 year, bachelor is 4 year. There is no
Okay.
justification why the length of the bachelor degree is increased from 3 to 4 years. They have not studied, they have not pointed out any limitation. But imagine the impact on the poor student. They will have to spend one more year to get a 4 year bachelor, which they won't
And
be
how are
able.
they going to get benefited by a 4 year bachelor in comparison to the 3 year old bachelor?
The point is that there will be benefit in the sense that in the market, if you go with a 4 year bachelor and other will go with a 3 bachelor, the market will prefer the 4 year. But the poor will not be able to do the 4 year bachelor. It is relatively economically better of people will do the 4 year bachelor. And then there is other follow-up action that those who do 4 year bachelor will have only
Hmm.
1 year master. Those who do 3 year bachelor will have to do 4 year master. So you are
Masters.
creating a caste system within the same degree. The impact is that the economically poor section will have landed with doing the degree with a 3 year bachelor, 2 year master. In the market, they will be not considered as much as the 4 year bachelor, and will be considered. And the onward march for the PhD will be is reduced quite a lot. You imagine they have also removed the MPhil degree, which
Yes,
benefit the poor.
this is something which I want to understand. That what is the negative implications of removing the MPhil degree?
The reason, that's what I am saying in by a Brahmanical scholarship, which is very ingenious. The lower income group, sorry to say that,
Yeah.
the lower income group, if you take the example of JNU, majority
Yes.
of them do MPhil. And
Right.
MPhil build up their capabilities to do PhD. And
Right.
many of them do MPhil and get a job also.
Right.
Now that avenue has been stopped. So there is a direct PhD program where the lower income group will be much lesser.
So they have to wait for a longer period of time before getting a job which is paying quite well.
Yeah, no, no. That's another consequences. The important point is that because MPhil will give you access to higher education, research, by removing that, and making PhD more difficult to get admission, the lower income group will not go for a higher education.
Right. Right.
That is the equity aspect. Understand this. This is an indirect equity aspect that you have an education, no problem, but up to graduate. Don't aspire to become a PhD, because that is our domain historically.
So the educational institutions are also going to be producing people on the basis of a new kind of a caste system. One
Absolutely, the
is by
government,
birth and the other is by education.
central government is saying that we won't give funding unless you follow this 4-year degree.
Yes.
Then there is other thing. You understand? They have introduced what is called multiple entry, multiple exit. What does it mean? It means that after 1 year, if you want to leave, you get a certificate. After 2 years, if you want to leave, you get a 2-year diploma. After 3 years, you get a bachelor. After 4 years, you get a bachelor. Now, at the moment, what happened? That a student leave after 1 year, he has a mark sheet. On the basis of that, he get a job, and he come back after 3-4 years. Why do you need a certification? Because the argument of many of them is that certification, when you leave, will legalize dropout, as a matter of fact, and they have made certain condition also.
So dropout, which is a huge phenomenon because of an unequal educational system, that is no longer going to be something which is going to be frowned upon.
Dropout will be legalized now. Legalized in the
Yes.
sense, if you at the moment, what happened? What is the provision? A first year boy leave because of any compulsion. So what is the qualification? First year mark sheet, and he try a job. They say no, we will give you a certificate to you that you have completed 1 year.
Okay.
So the chances of he or she coming back are much less. And so the onward march of towards the higher education of the masses will be reduced. That's the intention.
That a person is going to settle down in life, with a 1 year certificate, of completing, and then, getting some kind of a measly job, making some kind of lower income, lower middle class living.
Objective of higher education is to promote them to go for a graduation and postgraduate. This multiple entry, multiple exit mechanism will reduce the onward march to higher education. They will remain confined to first year, second year, or 3-year bachelor. So the equity,
and the people would be essentially from the lower castes.
lower caste, lower income group, basically.
Right.
The third measure which is made for quality improvement is the All India test, general test for admission.
Yes.
Now, at the moment, the state university conduct their own examination. Some of them do not conduct. On the basis of their mark, they give admission. In the colleges, they don't conduct the test. They see the marks 50% or 55, give the admission. This is more egalitarian, more easy and convenient. Now they are saying you have a state level test for admission to the university and the colleges, and recommended for the state. I don't think state have accepted majority of them, but they have implemented for the central universities. 47 central university have a common test now, and it has run into disaster. It is not only it has not improved quality, but it has reduced the access. These are mechanical.
How have they run into a disaster?
What the point is that these are mechanical tests where the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe are not able to qualify and do not make the cutoff point. So the percentage of scheduled caste has gone down in Jawaharlal Nehru University and many other universities. So why do you need a test? I think the whole debate for Tamil Nadu is this, that the national test, even for the medical examination, medical entrance, they say their argument is that the test is biased because the economically better of students go for a private coaching, get mechanical training, and they qualified more than the others poor. So it is biased. Holding a test is a bias mechanism. There was a committee set up by them. The committee found that the student which have a higher mark in the higher secondary, that is 12th standard, many of them did not get admission, and those who have a lower mark but went through the coaching, they got the admission. So it is inegalitarian and reduce the access of the lower income group. So my point is, when your enrollment rate at all India level is only 26% or 30%, why are you selective? Why do you need test? This is American model again. They should have studied it. The present system is very simple. A student goes to the university, goes to the colleges, show the certificate, get the admission. If some of the university want the test, For some department,
Hmm.
there is a test. It's a simple procedure. No, we want an
Yeah,
all India test.
like the
The
JNU used to have a test,
all India JNU.
JNU used to have a test, at least in the time that
JNU
I
has
enrolled in the
JNU had a test, but university level test
yes,
and
only
department wise
department wise, yeah.
interview also.
Interviews, exactly.
Okay, and the JNU
Yes,
they conduct the test in the 70 cities in the country and outside
right.
Dhaka and Kathmandu also and Colombo,
Yes.
and they conduct the test. Then they call the student who are qualified, and then they hold the interview even for MA. So they get the
Mm,
real student. That is why JNU has become number one within 30 years. Kolkata
right.
has been there for almost more than 150 years. So does Bombay and Madras. How come JNU has taken over this university within 30 years? Because they have several strengths, and admission policy was one of them. Now,
Right.
just to summarize then to your
Yeah.
point, that the measure introduced by the new education policy of recommending unitary university, recommending 3-year bachelor, recommending multiple entry, multiple exit, these are on the face of it are for the promotion of quality, but it will promote unequal access. That
Right.
is the
That is
consequence.
the that is the biggest that to
Yeah. Now come to
provide
your
unequal
yeah come to
access.
your
Yes.
major point. Come to your major point, which you are keen to listen to, is that beside this, the privatization which they have promoted will
Hmm.
obviously have an equal access. The difference in the
Hmm.
fees between private, government, and private aid is amazingly high,
It's known to
four
us. Yes.
times high. So privatization itself will reduce the access. And the other measure, which is in the new education policy, opening of foreign university campuses.
Right.
They have already brought out a regulation. Now the poor student even cannot afford the admission to the private university, even if they are
Hmm.
qualified. How can they afford the foreign
Only the
university?
super rich can go into these universities,
Exactly.
or the upper middle
You can,
classes.
you can
Not
see
even the
that.
middle classes.
Yeah, you can see that put together all measure mentioned for recommended for the quality, we will have a detrimental impact on access to the poor, including
That's
the, of course, the
the
privatization will hit them more. There is no doubt
okay.
about that. Please go ahead.
Professor, yeah, I have understood about this aspect. Now, there is another very important aspect, where I find this extremely paradoxical, and I'll try to, wind up our conversation on this, with this question, that at one level we are adopting the American structure, the American system, as you have explained, the American system of universities. At the other level, in terms of what we are teaching, we are introducing a certain amount of designization, which is actually ideologically driven. This entire thing called, the Indian knowledge system, which is being based upon, which is being talked about, and saying, that we are actually teaching what is actually part of our own culture, which has been completely left out by a colonial educational system. It's part of this 10-year long decolonization campaign which the government under Mr. Modi has recently launched, that we have to rid the colonial mindset and education also. So that is why we are going to be introducing Indian knowledge system. History will include mythology. It is not only going to be driven only on scientifically provable facts. History is one of the first things which have been targeted. Now, in a concise manner, how would you actually provide a critique of this approach of Indian knowledge systems and it being introduced within our educational, curriculum?
Well, this is a very important point. It is not only the history, but many disciplines are
No, no.
affected.
I just referred history
Yeah,
because that
yeah.
is what makes into the headlines of newspapers, very commonly understood by people, that they have erased 1200 years of history from all textbooks.
Yes, the curriculum and the course content are to be determined by the concept what is called Indian knowledge system. In the curriculum framework of the NCRT 2023, they define the Indian knowledge system. What is Indian
Hmm.
knowledge system? According to this, Indian knowledge system is all the knowledge generated within India,
Right.
including the knowledge generated by the tribals.
Hmm.
That is one thing. Second thing is that Indian knowledge system has another dimension, that it should be rooted in Indianness,
Hmm.
Indian culture and Indianness, Bhartiyatva. That is what they say.
Hmm.
Now, there is again a very ingenuity here that you must understand. Don't go on the face of it. That ingenuity is the following: that Nobody objected that the Indian knowledge should be made part of the curriculum. It's
Right.
already made. If you are teaching chemistry, whatever contribution we have made in chemistry, they are discussed, and then further, then what is the addition by the Western scholar? Same is mathematics, same is every subject. We teach Kautilya, but we also teach the Western economics.
Right.
So nobody is denying that Indian knowledge generated in India should not be taught. It is being taught already, but knowledge is always global with science or social sciences. But their
Exactly.
purpose is to bring a particular kind of a knowledge. Now that is this. That is the Indian knowledge system is what it will include the knowledge, religious knowledge of all the religion, uh, Buddhism, Jainism, Brahmanism, uh, excluding Christianity
Islam.
and the Islam, and also constitution, also human right, in a moral value
Right.
course, all that. Now, if you look at in the practice, what is being done is the following: that they have brought out 11 courses recently, 11 subjects, including mathematics, political science. The most affected, more than history, is the political science. If you look at the course
Right.
content, political
Yes.
science. Yeah. Now, the major point that I wanted to make is this, and they have also brought a moral value course, what is called Mulya Prabhava, and also a moral value course for the school. This Mulya Prabhava is for higher education, but school it is called a moral value and disposition course. This moral valuation course, as well as the course content of this 11 subject, it tells you one thing, that although on the pretext of including the knowledge from Indian religious system and Indian knowledge system and in moral course from Indian constitution and human right, basically the Brahmanical knowledge system is included here.
Right.
The Vedas, the Puranas, the Smrutis, the Upanishads, Shankaras. So the attempt is to Brahmanize the course content. And although on the pretext of it that we will include Jainism,
What are the non-Brahminical, knowledge, sources, which are not being, taught or being introduced in these curriculum?
all the non-Brahmanical religious knowledge system is excluded.
Right.
In moral, for example, I'll give the one example. If you look at the course content for the school and other, first question is, what is truth? The
Right.
truth in Buddhism is, truth is based on reasoning and logic and experience, the
Right.
senses, body senses. Okay, that's the definition. That is how
Yes.
you know the knowledge. In Brahmanism, knowledge is everything contained in Vedas, and that
Right.
knowledge is infallible, not subject to criticism, not
And not to
subject
be
to
questioned.
not to be questioned. That's what you are very right, and that has been mentioned there already. Now, so it means that it is not, it is not, uh, and and Buddha's theory is also cause and effect theory. You know, Pratyutta Samitpad is a cause and effect theory. Everything
Right.
that happens is a cause. Here, then there is no cause and effect theory. It is everything is decided in Veda. So this is one example, and there are several other examples. Of course, uh, Kautilya's Arthashastra and political science. There is a theory of political governance called what is called Manvantara. So all
And
the
of course, how
basically,
can we not, even in the
listen to
political sphere?
listen to me. On the name
Please.
of Hinduism, Brahmanism is brought. There is nothing like Hinduism in terms of ideology. It's a geographical term developed by
Right.
Al-Rumi. So it is the Brahmanical ideology, religious and social. In social also, instead of samta, there is a concept of samarasta. There are various ways of dealing the issues. So if you look at, and of course, quite openly now it is being in Madhya Pradesh, 22 book written by RSS are made compulsory. There is a bachelor course on Gita. And all kind of thing. In Maharashtra, in 11th and 12th, they have been they brought Ramdasa, and they brought Gita's theory of Karma Siddhanta. Now, what is Gita's theory of Karma Siddhanta? That your present is determined by the past and future will be determined by the present. So you cannot change your present. And then there is also an element of element that your karmas are determined by your own background. So there is an element of racial thing, determinism. So and
No,
the most important concept of Gita's Karma Siddhanta is फलाची अपेक्षा न करता कर्म करत don't accept the result, go on working. Now you tell
Yes.
to the student that he should work hard, but don't influence.
Politically, this means, that a worker is not to demand higher wages and they must accept whatever is offered to them. So it brings about, it
You can
actually
you can
it
interpret
hollows
that.
out the entire under concept of democracy and
So
the right which is enshrined in our constitution. Would you say
exactly,
that?
exactly. So I'm only confining to Indian knowledge system that,
Right.
broadly speaking, the approach is to bring the Brahmanical knowledge on the name of Hinduism, but exclude the non-Brahmanical tradition. Charvaka, for
Right.
example, is
Right. Yes, such
exercising
an important
economic
philosophical
factors.
sys-
So the earlier Marxist
yes, yes, yes.
thinking, and there are other, So I think that's the problem of
So
Indian
that's
knowledge.
the real problem. We are facing multiple problems in the sector of higher education, and there is actually reason to be extremely worried. Thank you, Professor Thorat. You have, explained in brief, what are the real crisis points for in the sector of higher education. We could have, of course, spoken for a much longer period of time, and I hope that in the coming months, I will once again come back to you to talk about those aspects which we have not been able to cover, especially after the Supreme Court hearing in the middle of March, on the 19th of March, when it is. I will try to once again speak to you. Thank you very much.